Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Vinecast. As per, we've got two games to recap for you. The games are coming in fast, and this month especially, May was a little light on games, but we're looking at about two games a week through the end of the season, and the season does end this month. So it's a bit of a sprint, but make sure to keep listening through this month because hearing our voices talk to Richmond Ivy will unfortunately not last too much longer this season. So first up this week, oh sorry, I forgot to introduce Matt. Matt is here too. It's the two of us. We're working hard bringing this podcast to you. We miss the rest of our friends, but we're working hard. Matt, how are you this evening?
Doing all right. Definitely picked up some sunburn out there at the City Stadium for the midday game. Uh, Should have known better, and yet here I am with some splashes of red all over me. But wouldn't have it any other way.
Those 2 p.m. kickoffs, especially now that we're actually summer proper, pretty brutal. But first up this week was away. The Ivy traveled back to Chantel Stadium, the site of, unfortunately, their first defeat of the season last week to the Virginia Marauders. Turns out Nova FC, who we played midweek, Nova does not refer to the sort of metro Nova area, Fairfax, Arlington, and that, but instead quite literally just North Virginia. So good for Winchester for sort of carrying two different W League teams. But so turns out that's what Nova is referring to. I think we all didn't expect that, but they share a stadium as well. So it was back to Chantel Stadium for the Richmond Ivy. But luckily, this one went a little bit differently. We knew going into this one that based on how the teams had performing in the table, this was going to be a bit of a litmus test. Virginia Marauders, after beating them on the first day of the season, they've gone on a bit of a tear. So that was a tough defeat, but in line with how they'd been performing against the other teams. Nova came into it with a much more mixed record, so it definitely gave us a bit of perspective about where we fall on the table as a whole outside of Charlottesville and Marauders. It was a pretty small sample size to start off with. It was a pretty typical 11. Sarah Flamia was rotated for this one. So Kana actually started in the midfield instead of up top like she normally does. But otherwise, it was pretty similar to what we've seen so far. Yeah, they started well and scored their first half goal of the season. Unfortunately, it's been a bit of a second half team. But scoring a goal the first half, we love to see that. And it was very exciting because this was also Kendall Sarver's first goal of the season. So I will just quickly describe this one. So she was played in centrally. She runs into the box and finishes from the top of the sixth in the 16th minute. So it was very exciting to see one of our forwards who's been putting in a shift game after game get her first of the season. Matt, anything you want to add about how the Ivy started or how the first goal came about?
No, I mean, I think we've seen a lot these patterns so far this year. Possibly actually more in the first half. They just haven't come off quite yet because it's not like Ivy's been slow starters and they can't get going. They just haven't been able to get the ball into the goal in the first half. So far. So being able to kind of see them strike early and be able to kind of get that weight off their shoulders of okay, can we be able to do this? But also being able to quickly erase any kind of lingering feeling from just 4 days prior when they were on that same field and it didn't go great from them. Being not having that hanging over their head of, oh no, is this going to happen again? Is this going to happen again? Really, really helpful. And then, getting another new face onto the score sheet. Kendall. Only good things come out of that. But nothing overly noteworthy about the goal itself. I didn't think. Just good shot.
Yeah, good composure. Sometimes players get in good positions. I watched the academy team today. Watch W League now. a couple games. Sometimes players get in really good positions and just sort of overthink it. It's almost the opportunity is too high quality that they overthink the play a little bit. And it's nice to see sort of that composure in a scenario where you're right in the center of the box and you've got kind of the whole goal looking at you and actually being able to pick the right option and get it past the keeper.
Right.
There's a lot more to that when you're still.
Yeah, you see it so often that players will get in that spot and just hit it straight at the keeper when either side works fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, full credit to
So
Kendall.
yes, great work, Kendall. And the good vibes continued in the first half. So not only did we get one goal in the first half, but we got two, which is really exciting. And this was what has now become a familiar name to Rich Ivies fans. Kana Matsuhisu scores Ivies second in the 30th minute. So she, again, I said she was playing centrally today, so she was not playing on the wing as we've seen her a lot at City Stadium. So she drives the ball right down the center in the box and gets pushed down right outside the six. Easy call for the ref. And she steps up to take it and she buries it to the top right. So you love to see penalties sort of. We discussed at the beginning of the season, we weren't sure who the penalty takers were going to be for this team because not many had taken them in their college career, and pretty much all of them, if they'd taken one, they'd either missed and made it, and they'd taken two, they'd missed one and made one. So not necessarily a standout in who's going to be the penalty taker. So it's really exciting to see a player like Kana, who's playing with such confidence, earn herself a penalty and then have the confidence step up and take it, bury it with perfect penalty. So you really love to see that.
Yeah, what I liked was the confidence of she gets fouled and immediately just grabs the ball. This is mine. I'm taking it. That shows again, that self confidence. Kind of shows the leadership on the team too. And I think even though she doesn't necessarily have the armband, I think she's certainly established herself as an on the field leader. That when the going gets tough, get the ball to Kana. She's going to be able to make something out of this. And I mean, all the girls on the team. I think if you want anybody with the ball driving forward, like she did for that right there. So far and away, it's Kana this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On the wing, down the middle, this girl can do it all. And it's really exciting to see someone. We weren't sure sort of before the season starts. It's such a short season. It's a lot of goals, but it's a really short season. And there's so much this team needed to do starting from. We weren't sure, are we see any standouts? Is there anyone who's going to sort of take this opportunity from the jump and really make their mark on this team? And it's been really exciting to see someone who she does have experience. She played for Indy 11 last season, who did win the championship. She didn't play a lot of minutes. I think she played like a total of 30 minutes or something across the whole season. So yeah.
But it also gives me a little bit of hope. That's wild to say, but looking ahead to next year already, because I have to believe that her even having the experience of knowing what one of these sprint seasons is like, of how to be able to handle what some of the levels of the teams are or aren't in certain scenarios, and being able to integrate with the team of girls that presumably hasn't played much with, and being able to find something that can gel in a short time. Like I don't care who you are as a coach. Like Kimmy could be the greatest coach in the world, but it takes time to be able to build some of that, and knowing how to, as a player, put yourself into that scenario. It's really helpful. So if we can get you know, you know, even half of these girls back again for next year, I think just knowing what you're walking into is going to make a huge difference, and allow the team to get up to speed even quicker.
Agreed. And sort of touching on that, what you were saying about integration, this is something that Kimmy brought up in the press conference after this most recent game. But we do have 4 VCU players on the team. That includes Kana. And the other VCU players are Kendall, who we just mentioned, Ava Pustover, who's been playing right back whenever she's on the field, and Lindsay Munyak, who's been playing left back. And so she's often on the same wing. So it's really nice. Kimmy said this in the press conference, that it gives you a little bit of a leg up when you have a couple players who already know each other's games, who already work well together. So some of this synergy could be also coming from the fact that she's playing with Lindsay behind her. She's playing with server in front of her. So there's just the possibility of a good amount of
Mhm.
synergy from those players that gives you a little bit of a chemistry boost.
Yeah, absolutely, and you gotta take that anywhere you can get it in a, short season kinda league.
Yeah. And of course, the good things for Kana didn't stop. Um, the first half sort of were marked by the goals. For I wouldn't say Nova got into it too much. Going into the half, Ivy have typically been very strong in the second half, and that was true. Pretty much right off kickoff, Kana gets on the score sheet again. This one was more of a defensive lapse, but all credit to her. Essentially, right off the kickoff, Nova's playing the ball back, misplaced back pass, Kana runs onto it, and she hits it. She takes it into the box and hits it first. So again, the mark of a player who's confident in when she shoots, something good will come of it. Who's making the most of opportunities when they come her way. So yeah, the good did not stop. That was her fourth goal in 4 games, which is a good record for someone who we didn't necessarily have our eye on as a goal scorer coming into this season.
No, not at all. I think, we all, had our eyes on, Simmons and, you know, the older Flumia, as, kind of the, you know, ones who will carry the load in the attack, but turns out it's our well, I guess I don't know if she's actually ever represented, her country, but our other, international, you know, player there, uh, you know, from Japan who I mean, let's be real. Japan has been cranking out high quality, especially women's players like nobody's business in your recent years. So if kind of wants to come back next year and maybe we say, hey, bring a couple friends, with you. I'm not opposed to that.
No, this is a lot of teams in this league with a lot of international players. Ivy's on our division in particular. So we'd love to see some more players maybe with international experience coming into the team. And maybe we'll see Kana playing for Japan someday. This
Yeah.
sky's the limit, honestly.
Hey,
Everyone's already asking, do we think scouts are here? People are looking at her. She is one good player.
last time we had a W League team, you know, one central defender was on the team, Becky Sauerbrunn. Anything ever happened to her?
That name ring a bell? I don't know. She's a bit of an unknown, I think.
Yeah, but I cannot remember her name now. The Irish girl. There, there's another Destiny player who was playing for I think it was Ireland in this last World Cup, and I cannot remember her name now for the life of me. Mostly
Or
because
like
I
Sinead Farrelly or something.
yes, yes. So
Mind.
there's been a pipeline, and of course Cam, uh, as well. So there's been a pipeline coming, from Richmond into high level women's soccer in the past. We just took a little break from it, give everybody else a chance.
Exactly. We're going to be producing top stars like nobody's business. It starts here. Um, so we were looking at a pretty routine 3-0 win. We were hoping that Ivy were going to snag another. Unfortunately, we did not get another massive goal fest. We are on the pursuit of goal differential. I think that does become pretty important as the sort of top of the divisions and the bottom of the divisions are seems to be a bit of a split. Goal differential makes a pretty big difference when deciding between second place teams who do move on to the playoffs overall. So it was good to see the Ivy pick up 3 goals, but that goal differential was eaten into a little bit halfway later on in the second half when Nova did end up nicking a goal. Matt, do you want to quickly describe that? You just rewatched it.
Yeah, and a credit to Nova. I think well built team goal. They were able to win the ball in the midfield and you kind of you know gradually move the ball left or right. You know, played a through ball. Kind of cutting through behind the left back. Nova players right there. Hit a nice shot. I really don't know if you could say that there's any way it should be saved unless you just get lucky and it gets hit right at you. But well built goal. not afraid to give credit, when that happens, and it'll happen from time to time. But there's that was pretty much the end of Nova's real chances, and yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
good for them.
It was
They
a
got
good
one.
defensive
We got three.
yeah, it was yeah, exactly. Good defensive performance overall. Would have liked to see that goal differential a little bit bigger, but we'll take the win. And we did have a few season debuts as well. Macy Landell and Emerson Moore made their first appearances for the team. Emerson notably is a rising sophomore in high school, so it's very, very impressive for her to be already playing in his team. She has signed for Richmond United, will be playing for the first time for Richmond United this summer. So exciting. She didn't get too many minutes, came on pretty late in the second half, but exciting to see the future of Richmond women's soccer. Sorry, there's a motorcycle right outside my window. Apologies for the noise. And it's not leaving. Okay, great.
I can't hear
Well,
it. It
we're
makes it feel
excited.
any better.
Okay, yeah, that does because it's really loud. We're excited to see the future of Richmond women's soccer with Emerson. Maybe we'll see her playing for W League for 7 odd years if she's starting this young. But that's
Yeah.
pretty much it. That was a good trip up north.
Yeah, absolutely. They're done with the Shenandoah, leg of the season. Now, didn't get all 6 points like we hoped, but rebounded, got 3 out of there, and that kind of keeps the momentum moving forward to have a viable chance at a playoff spot.
Exactly. And hopefully we'll be able to pick up 3 points when Nova comes back to city as well and impress them with our atmosphere because atmosphere was a little bit lacking both visits. One fun fact is that Nova actually their USL2 team was playing Lionsbridge right after. So shout out to the Lionsbridge fans who caught a few minutes of the Richmond Ivy. We will be seeing you again on Wednesday because Ivy has another doubleheader with Lionsbridge, this time away at Charlottesville. So I don't think that
Huh.
was intentional from the schedulers, but it's lovely that two clubs with such a history of supporting one another, we're getting to see some 2 games in 1 there from both
I
sides
did
of
not
the fans.
look that closely and notice that. So
Yeah, I didn't know that either until one of the Lionsbridge fans let us know in the Facebook group that he was excited to get to see a few minutes of a Richmond Ivy game. And I said, oh, well, that's great. We already knew that we were going to be seeing Lionsbridge for the doubleheader at Charlottesville. It makes that Charlottesville trip even more worth it. We'll talk about that later on, but exciting to be able to catch some of Lionsbridge's games without having to go quite as far as all the way down to Virginia Beach.
absolutely.
Yeah, so that was the way at Nova. Picked up. We are still in pursuit of our first 6-point week because unfortunately we came back to City Stadium to play Christos, who there's a long history on the men's side between the Kickers and Christos. So we were hoping to make it 2 wins in 2 against Christos at City Stadium this season after the Kickers beat them in the Open Cup earlier this spring. But unfortunately, it was not to be, and the Ivy did have their first home loss of this season. Not it's still a spirited performance, but definitely not the Ivy we're used to seeing in their playing against a team with sort of a winnable outcome. Not too many changes to the starting 11. We're seeing some familiar names sort of week in, week out. Lindsay Muniak, Mason Nelson, Kylie Fitzgerald, Hannah Heaton, Taylor Berry, Kendall Sarver, Kana Matsuhisa. The one big change was actually Cameron Miller started this game in place of Lauren Hargrove and did play the full 90. So she did get her full game debut instead of coming in as a sub, as we've seen her in a few other matches. And we Ella Stanley come in, as we were told by Kimmy, she was actually playing in the 6 role, which was a departure for her. And the other season debut we saw was Erin Junkman. We have not seen her. She plays for Georgetown for her collegiate career. This was her season debut. She was playing center back. So the bones of the sort of preferred 11 are, you're able to see that with a few sort of tactical rotational changes from game to game.
Yeah, and that's always going to happen, in this league because it is a summer, league. So you might miss players because of international call-ups, like why Cam, wasn't there. You might miss players because of injuries. You might miss players because they might have a normal internship or summer job or whatever, and can't make a bus trip for a 5 p.m. midweek game in Winchester. For instance, you might have a family issue. There's so many reasons why a roster might be in flux. So that's partly why you see such a large initial roster that the Ivies built up. Uh, on the fan side, it makes it a little bit tougher because you just don't necessarily know who's going to be available, game to game sometimes. But it's also good to be able to utilize that big roster in this sprint of a season because if you're playing, the same 11, 12 girls, 2 games a week, like their legs are going to fall off before too long.
Yeah. If Jurgen Klopp is complaining about 12:30 p.m. kickoffs on Saturday morning with his Premier League squad of players with the videos and recovery practices and training facilities that money can buy, you cannot apply that same. You cannot expect W League players to be able to do it either. So we're happy
Yeah.
to see the rotation. We're happy to see players getting rest from half to half, wherever we can take it. All right. So this one, unfortunately, the Ivy did strike first. This is only the second game where they have gone behind, and the first one was also a loss. So far, no come from behind wins, but I'm sure we'll get there.
They
The
don't need
first
to
one,
just win from ahead every game. I'm fine with that.
that's true. That's true. Either massive blowout or an eked out loss, I guess, is the only categories these fall into. The first one for Christos. Sorry, I forgot to write it down. Was this the one off the set piece?
No, this is the one where so Christos pretty consistently in the first half. Uh, you know, were comfortable knocking the ball around quite a bit. They had, some really talented, skilled players in the midfield where they were having a lot of good connected passes, but it looked to me like they were looking for one-on-ones with their strikers against IB defenders, and a lot of times it wouldn't necessarily come off, but a few times it did. And on this one, it looks like I'm not sure which defender he was caught in the one-on-one, but Christos, attacker, ended up in kind of a one-on-one, almost straight down, the middle of the field, about, starting about maybe 20, 25 yards from goal, got her way, uh, you know, into, top of the box and, uh, got the defender, turned a little bit and just hit, in fairness, a really nice, left-footed shot into the top corner. Like, I don't know if, uh, Cameron, too many girls with the same names. I'm realizing, uh, but I don't know if she really could have done much about it. It was a pretty clean strike, and like I said, she just picked the top corner.
Yeah, and credit to her. You get some good shots, and especially this sort of. I reference Kimmy a lot when I'm able to talk to her because she is such her mind. She touches on so many great things. She mentioned how one of and both the players that we talked to after the game, Lindsay Muniak and Cam Miller, both said the same thing that they really have to take each game as it comes. They're so fast that you can't really you don't have the time to like rest on your laurels if you're coming off of a win or wallow too much in a loss. You really have to wipe the slate clean for each game because it's just the game's coming too quickly to really depend on the previous result to be indicative of next. So they definitely started a bit slowly, a little bit lethargically. I think the heat sort of took a lot out of everybody. Maybe Christos was a bit more prepared for it than we were. I don't know. Maybe they play midday more often. So coming off of a win, it's not ideal to immediately go down a goal, especially since they had just lost a game and came back from that so impressively. So definitely some issues in terms of being turned on sort of from the starting whistle. And I think you could see that in both goals that were conceded. But it wasn't exactly a first half performance to be proud of, but it wasn't awful. And the heat definitely was a massive factor. It was a massive factor for the crowd, for everybody involved. But
well, I mean, in fairness, they did get that goal back relatively quickly.
Yeah. Yes. Which was really good from a mindset perspective. This one did come off a corner. We got a little bit of a hand of God action from one of the Christos defenders who swatted the ball off the goal line. Half the Ivy players.
More Luis Suarez than a hand of God.
Half the Ivy team turned to wave their arms at the ref, demand a penalty, and Kylie Fitzgerald was sitting in there in the six and knocked the ball in the back of the net anyway. So no penalty was called despite the egregious handball, and interestingly, no red card was awarded for the very obvious denial of a goal scoring opportunity. Yes, the goal was eventually scored, but she was booked with a yellow card after the fact, which I don't.
No, it's the right way to call it, because obviously the goal scoring opportunity was not denied at that point, but it was still a intentional handball. So technically correct in that regard. I would go back and forth with that, even in the moments like, okay, obviously, yes, love a goal, right? It's kind of hard to want to say you want to pull that, off the board. But, I mean, playing an hour, against, 10 and knowing you're going to have a penalty, coming, like, I might rather had, take my chances from the spot and, gone up against 10, especially in the heat, especially, knowing everything else. But, credit to Kylie, she was right there to be able to pounce on an opportunity and knock it straight home. So it feels weird to complain about a goal, but it's one of those weird situational things. And the ref, in fairness, would have had like half a second to be able to call it in real time. So can't really begrudge how that played out, because they scored. So
yeah, I know it's a little tough because a few seasons ago, the FIFA referees changed it, because initially DOGSO is the abbreviation, denial of a goal scoring opportunity, was always a red card offense. And if it was in the box, it was always a penalty and a red card. If you were denied an obvious goal scoring opportunity, it didn't matter if the foul was not actually at a red card level. If you would not give a red card anywhere else on the field, if it was the denial of an obvious goal scoring opportunity in the box, it was automatically a penalty and a red card. So they changed that because, understandably, a lot of people said it's not always fair to send someone off for what would not be a red card anywhere else on the field, which then led to the introduction of the penalty and the yellow card, cautioning the player for committing the foul if it was not actually a red card worthy foul. In my humble opinion, whacking the ball at the goal line with your hand is a red card foul, because
it definitely is.
So that to me is the point of contention, not because I wanted her to be, but I think she should have been sent off either way, because that foul was red card worthy. It wasn't just like a shoulder bump that would have been a yellow card anywhere else. To me, that was a red card foul, so she should have been sent off to the goal. But I don't understand the application of the yellow card, because I don't think it was a yellow card worthy offense. I don't think whacking the ball off the goal line with your hand is a yellow card.
Yeah, to not to turn this into a refereeing podcast, because nobody wants to listen to that. But
hey, I was a referee. Okay, I earned my credentials. I was a referee for 6 years.
I have good friends who repped at high levels and everything. So we would talk about all this absolutely nerdy stuff, but I don't think anybody else wants to listen. But short version,
Fair.
like once it's not denial of a goal. Once she Kylie puts the ball in the goal, it's just another handball in that case, which is the yellow card offense. So we can move along, though.
That's okay. You never know what you're going to get from referees at this level anyway.
That's also fair.
So we'll take the yellow, because half the time, as we've seen from other games we've watched this week, sometimes things that seem to be an obvious yellow card don't get the yellow in the first place. So at least she was given the card, although it ultimately did not earn us anything in the long run. But all credit to Kylie. That's her second goal of the season after scoring in the 5-0 win against Charlottesville. But unfortunately, that was the end of the excitement from an Ivy supporter perspective, as Christos got one back also off a corner kick a few minutes later. Um, it happens. I think set pieces at this level are a bit of a mixed bag because you have a really wide difference in height. You have a wide difference in quality of the ball being played into the box. You got a lot of bodies, limbs flying around. So, yeah, set pieces are a bit of a roll of the dice, kind of across the board. Did you see anything in that goal you wanted to comment on that?
No, I mean, I'm trying to find the way to say this that you know doesn't come across the wrong way. I feel like at this level, just with the size of the women's players. I mean, where the differences between the guys' games where the keepers are like 6'4" most of the time, and you can go up and get the ball out of there almost all the time. Like when you're playing with 5'8", 5'9" keepers, like flood the box, like make it hard for them to get where they need to be, and good things can happen. We've seen that happen, uh, in the Charlottesville game where Ivy scored one like that. I mean, it's not too dissimilar than how Ivy scored just a few minutes prior, right before the handball. Like, get the ball in there, and the ball can bounce around. If you get good service, good things can happen. In there, you don't necessarily need to have the cleanest set play lined up. You can just muck your way into a couple goals if the ball just happens to fall to the right person's foot at the right time, which unfortunately it did.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've seen so far from Cameron Miller, because I thought that we actually got to see her, I think, a lot more than we have in the past, and also they were put under a lot more pressure than we've seen from other games. So I thought full credit. I thought Cameron Miller overall had a pretty good game. Her shot stopping, especially when they were defending the section O end, was pretty top class. She pulled out some really important saves, some fingertip saves, pushed the ball over the crossbar, pushed it out wide. But one of the things that we've noticed from Lauren Hargrove is she has complete control of her box. She's very imperious in her own box. She's not afraid to come out. So I think I haven't seen that quite as much from Cameron. So hopefully that's something that she's been working on, and that playing more minutes at this level will help build her confidence, because she's pretty tall as well.
Hmm.
She again, I interviewed her after the game, and she's definitely 5'8", 5'9", which is unfortunately at the taller end of some of the players that we're seeing on this field. But I think that's one area for growth that we're seeing in her game, is the control and the command she has over her box. I think she grew in that over the
Hmm.
course of the game, but maybe if she has that from the jump, she comes out a little bit stronger on those set pieces,
Yeah,
and grabs the ball out of the air.
yeah. I thought both keepers were really, really good on Saturday. Unfortunately, Christos' keeper you know, kept the game at 2-1 with a few really high quality saves in the second half, especially. And then, Cam had a few of her own when the team was pushing up, and Christos was able to come back on a counter to keep the Ivy in the game. But I know in preseason showed Kate, we you especially had mentioned that goalkeeping can be a little iffy at this level sometimes, and both of them really turned out and made a very strong impression for themselves.
Yeah, I think goalkeeping can be an issue in the women's game from top to bottom. So it's always, I think, shot stopping, seeing very good shot stopping is always impressive, no matter who you're seeing it from, because just the instincts, the getting the ball, to both get your hand on the ball and direct the ball somewhere out of danger, uh, whether that's towards the corner flag or up and over the bar. Yeah, it's really good to see just some high quality shot stopping. I thought Cameron also had some pretty good distribution out of the back as well,
Hmm.
pretty comfortable with her feet, which a game like how the Ivy likes to play, where they want to move the ball quickly, they want to get the ball out of the back quickly, having a keeper who's not dependent on whacking it long, but being able to comfortably play it to her center backs or her wingers or directly up the middle, is a pretty big asset. I think I've seen that a bit from both Cameron and Lauren so far. So very good to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the rest of the game, the second half it wasn't quite end to end. I would say we had more possession than Christos did, but Christos still broke through, had several very good opportunities, especially near the end as everyone was getting tired, and they were able to more quickly break. They had some good chances near the end. But overall, relatively uneventful. Keepers were making some pretty decent saves. Yeah, I think I played a lot better in the second half, stepped up the pressure, kept the ball, got into dangerous positions a little more often. But unfortunately, we've seen it in first halves. It's something that we've all talked about, that it's just finishing. It came back to bite. They're just they had several good opportunities. The keeper made big saves, and they just were not able to finish the ball. Which, when you can't finish in more marginal experience, in more marginal games, you're not going to win games. You're not going to pick up points. So
Yeah. Well, I'm encouraged though, because it was the goalkeeper, keeping them out rather than the Ivy just not being able to find the target in any way. Because it felt for a good while like, it was coming. Then for me, probably around like 70, 75, and felt like, the game just lost a lot of steam. No pun intended, because the heat was picking up, and everything kind of just started to fizzle out a lot, there at the end.
yeah. One thing that we were talking about before the show that we also just wanted to mention. So Erin Junkman came in. She was playing center back. She got at the half, but I thought she had a great first half. Unfortunately, she was down at the opposite end. We weren't seeing her up close, but she was demonstrating something we've seen a lot from the center backs overall and from more defensive players, is the center backs and the defensive central midfielders are very comfortable on the ball, taking the ball into midfield. If they're on the ball in the back and they don't see an option, they're very comfortable taking their space, driving into the midfield. I've seen that from Ella Stanley. I've seen it from Mason Nelson and Erin Junkman as well in this one. So that's something that we saw in the player announcements as sort of defensive-ish players were being announced. A lot of them were focused more on maybe their one-on-one going forward abilities, their comfort on the ball, their attack mindedness, despite being, playing in a defensive role for their college team. So clearly, players who are comfortable getting forward, kind of regardless of their position on the pitch, was something Kimmy was looking for in her recruitment. And I think we've seen that a lot from their backs. Just, they're not hanging back. They're not waiting for the option, the midfield, to come to them, but they're taking their space. They're making the option if it's not immediately available.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned this is a trend we're seeing more and more, at all levels. Like, I think it's being regularly taught, the youth level. I know it was certainly not something, back in my day that was, common. It was playing is a pass there, great. If not, get it out of the way and everything. But seeing, the girls have the composure, be able to, turn, have their head on a swivel and be able to drive forward, when necessary. And I know one of my, I guess it's not an unconscious bias if I know it's, a bias that I have, is, I can certainly be, a little bit sizist when it comes, on the field. I came out a little bit when we were talking about the goalkeepers, too. But that's also what stood out for me so much, with, Ella out there, because she's not a big girl. She's like, from what I can tell from the stand, seems to be very slight, in build. And she was just out there, controlling the ball, running all over the place, pinging the ball 50 yards, diagonal across the field, like nobody's business. So you especially in that, kind of, six center back, because I felt like she did move back to center back at some point. Like, you're used to seeing the bigger players on the field and not somebody with, her, stature, with her build, and she did really well. So I think because of my bias, she, stood out to me, and, really was able to impress me with, her performance there.
Yeah, and Ella was also name dropped by Kimmy in the post-game presser. I asked her if all the players have familiarity in the role that they're playing, because obviously with the rotation, you have players moving between different roles within the game, between different starting 11s. And so I asked, does every player have a level of comfort where you're asking them to play? Is anyone playing in a new position? And she said most players have they've played in the roles that they're playing in at some point in their career, but it might not have been recently. And she gave the example of Ella, who played as a 6 under Kimmy in high school for her club career on occasion, but does not play in that role at the college game. So Kimmy was very impressed at her ability to re-step into that role despite it being several years, since she'd played there with any regularity. And yeah, I thought conducted herself very well and has shown that she can play in multiple positions along the back line and sort of in the defensive setup. So yeah, great game for Ella there. Yeah, so that was game 2 of the week. Christos was another one of those mid-table teams that was going to give us, I think, a sense of where we stack up against the division as a whole. Obviously not a great one to lose to, but we'll have a second go at them away. Maybe it'll be a little less warm. And the Ivy will show up starting whistle this time. That's something that both the players that I talked to, Cameron and Lindsay, in the post game, mentioned. They weren't happy with themselves. They weren't happy with their first half performance. They didn't think they came out strong enough. And I think it happens, especially heat like that. So hopefully away at Christos, we'll see a different Ivy when they go up to Baltimore later in the season.
Yeah.
For
me, the good news is the Ivy are still right there, in it, because this division is becoming a big old, kind of just cluster of teams who seem to be right in the same area. Like Eagle is up at the top; they might be the class so far. We got 2 shots at them, but after that, Lancaster, Marauders, Christos, and Ivy are all on 9 points, right now. So there's only 3 points behind Eagle. So still everything to be able to play for. Like, yeah, you'd rather not be, 2 losses at this point, but there's still time to be able to overcome that. Have 2 against Eagle and Lancaster, so still fully in the Ivy's hands to be able to control what their fate is going to be.
Yeah, those will be really interesting games. Just for a quick preview of what we've got coming up this week, we play away at Charlottesville on Wednesday. A couple of us are taking a half day, probably gonna hit up Winery beforehand, similar to what we did in Winchester. So if you're interested in that, be sure to join the Facebook group. Get connected with me. We're looking forward to that. Should be a fun away day, hopefully with a similar score line like we saw at City Stadium. Again, with the doubleheader at Lionsbridge, with Lionsbridge playing Charlottesville USL team at 7:30 after the 5 p.m. kickoff for the Ivy. But then Friday is our first game in Pennsylvania. So Eagle and Lancaster are both based in Pennsylvania. Friday is away at Lancaster. That is an unbelievably short turnaround time with Wednesday to Friday, 2 games within 48 hours. Especially against a really tough team in Lancaster. And I don't know. I'm not going into this thinking that this will be an easy win, but it'll be fascinating to see how Ivy square up against a team with a very strong record from last season who seem to be continuing that streak, whether or not we're able to get a result there.
Yeah, I mean, tough. And then, looking at the Lancaster results, they played Christos 2-0. Like, that doesn't seem too outrageous. They beat Nova 3-1. That sounds familiar. Right? They gave Marauders a beat down, but it's not impossible, right? And
no,
I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we see Kimmy roll the dice a little bit on the Wednesday game against a weaker Charlottesville opponent, and try to save the legs a little bit, for Friday, knowing that Friday probably is not entirely, but almost close to a de facto playoff game.
Yeah. This is a 6-pointer again, I say, on Friday. So we'll definitely be keen to get the stream on for that one, and be tuned in to see how they perform. And briefly, they will get a bit of a rest. The next home game won't be until the Thursday following. So almost 2 weeks from now, a little under 2 weeks from now, against Patuxent. I say this because if you have not made a plan to be at City Stadium that Thursday on June 13th, please do. Patuxent has played 3 games so far. Last I checked, they might be up to 4. They might have played this weekend. At a goal differential of -32.
They played 4 now. They've improved. They only lost 5-0 this last time.
Against
Eagle.
Maybe that game was canceled in the middle. That happened for Eagles game against Charlottesville. It's a 3-0 result. That game was called off due to lightning in the 30th minute, and Eagle were already up 3-0. And then they were going to replay it, and I guess maybe the scheduling didn't work, the travel didn't work with the distance, and so they just ended up giving Eagle the 3-0 result, which I think that's a gift for Charlottesville's goal differential if
they win the distance.
If that's the rate.
I'm looking at their lineup, like I'm going to know who the regular starters are versus the reserve players are. So maybe they gave their second team a run out and still dropped 5 on them.
That pretty could be very, very, very likely. But yeah, so the first 3 games, Patuxent dropped at least 10 goals in each one. So hopefully Ivy will continue suit, because if they do want to be fighting at the top, goal differential does matter. And if everybody else is dropping 10, looks like we got to drop 10 as well.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So make a plan to be at City Stadium on June 13th for the Ivy game versus Patuxent. They better win now that I've been hyping it up to everyone I know. And then lastly, quickly before we end this podcast, shout out Cam. She played about 25 minutes against the one and only Brazil on Saturday. Massive opponent. They did end up losing, I think, 4-0. But really exciting to see Cam get some meaningful minutes near the end of that one, especially against an opponent of that caliber. According to Google reviews, she was audience participation reviews, she was at a 4.3 out of 5 rating, so conducted herself well. And it's just really, really exciting to see players on our roster getting appearances at the international level, not just in general, but against opponents as illustrious as Brazil. So really exciting for Cam.
Yeah, it can only be a good thing for her development as well, to get that kind of experience, that kind of exposure at the highest level possible.
Yeah. And now she'll come back to us. So they play once more, I think, on Tuesday. And then she'll hopefully be back soon after that, because she adds a lot to this offense. She adds a lot of unpredictability, work rate, and just quality. So hopefully having her back for the very difficult run-in where we play Lancaster and Eagle twice. We play each of those teams twice in the next 3-ish weeks. So be looking forward to having her back for those. Any final thoughts, Matt?
No, I mean, this team's fun to watch. Games are fun. Still great turnout even for 2 p.m. On Saturday, and looking forward to continuing to see what they can be able to produce moving forward. And the best thing about this league, I think, is that you're never that far away from the next game.
No rest for the wicked, that's for sure. And with that, thank you all for listening. Feel free to follow us on your listening your social media platforms at River City 93. We'll be looking forward to seeing you at City Stadium on June 13th, and on the YouTube streams the terrible YouTube streams that we're all tuning in for the away games in the meantime. Maybe if we're lucky, some of these home teams will decline to record, and then we could get the Kickers broadcast instead. The Kickers Ivy front office quality broadcast instead. So with that, thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.